Hello, dear friends. I am presenting alone today because Matthew is away at a little retreat, and I am going to be teaching you today about one of my favorite things about Hellenistic astrology, which is that it is a system that is built to solve the problem that it points out, right? So a great frustration that probably many of you have had with readings or with astrology in general is like, oh, there's all of these issues that I have with my charts, these problem areas, now what do I do about it? Well, today is going to be all about the beginning stages of now what do I do about it? And of course that is, oh, thank you. This is our wall of great nerdery. It's all Lord of the Rings stuff that we had for our wedding back in so this is the White Tree of Gondor. Are there any other Lord of the Rings nerds in the house? Give me a thumbs up. Come on, don't make me feel lonely in my nerdery over here. Okay. But anyway, so sorry, I'm just kind of jumping right into it because there is, as usual, there's a lot to cover with remediation. Those of you who are familiar with Jyotish or Vedic know that, remediation is a huge part of Jyotish or, Indian astrology. Hellenistic astrology uses a lot of the same systems, though different stones. Different ways of going about it, but all, a really beautiful system. So while I'm looking at the chat box here, how many of you are familiar with remediation to some degree? Give me like a thumbs up. How many of you have, so I know some of you are familiar with Matthew and I's work, but how many of you have, or maybe just think about, how have you worked with the difficult aspects in your charts? I just want you to start reflecting on ways that you've tried to actively engage with some of the difficult energy in your chart, or even some of the ways that you've tried to really capitalize on or build upon the strengths in your chart, because remediation does that as well, and it does it in a number of different ways. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in and share my screen. Let me get it set up. I'm not. Most of you probably already know. I don't think Matthew and I, neither of us really are the most tech savvy here. I know I can do this. I just need you to become big. Slideshow. Yes. Beginning. Can we play? Okay, great. So I got. Wait, no, go back. We will get through this. Okay, share screen. There we go. Okay. Now, I think I do this. Okay. All right. So hopefully everybody can see this now. Okay. So clearly today we are going through remediation. Okay. So what is remediation? It is the art of discovering the energetic roots of an illness and or affliction and developing means for actively engaging with or shaping those roots to better nourish the body and grow the soul. This is my own kind of poetic definition of remediation. I'm sure if you looked it up online, you would find a different one. But I kind of tried to cover within this definition a few different elements, right? So remediation on one level is what we might call doctoring, right? It's a means of healing. And in the ancient world, remediation was used very, very actively, foundationally, astrological remediation specifically was used foundationally as medicine, as a means of healing the body, right? So I think that, some of you remember in the very first of this series, I gave the quote from Hippocrates, the father of medicine, which is a doctor who doesn't know how to read the stars isn't a doctor, but a fool, right? So there's this way in which the ancients really saw the relationship between the stars and the body, or the movement of the stars and the functionality of the body, as being deeply intertwined. But of course, we all know that physical illnesses manifest in other areas of our life first, right? It manifests in our relationships, it manifests in our mood, and then it becomes an illness, right? So ultimately, we want to be able to see these energetic imbalances before they become a physical illness. And the chart can often, by means of transits, by looking at, what's happening in your chart right now, the way that the planets are affecting you right now, you can even see kind of like the line of progression that an energetic stagnation or that an energetic imbalance is going to take before it reaches the body. Right. And now this, I'm going to go ahead and, just let you know, this is a very complicated topic. I am going to give you the very basics of it today. So please hold on to your questions, put them in the question box. You can chat about things, of course, with each other in the chat box. But I just want to make sure that, when you have questions, that you're putting them out there. And even if we're not able to, go over them today, it could be something that, we tag on, later, or that we come back to, especially when we start talking about aspects later. We haven't talked about aspects yet, and that is very important when we're thinking about remediations. But just think about your chart in general and some of the weaknesses, strengths, or just issues, questions you have with your chart, and think about ways that it might be affecting your life. And then as I continue to talk, think about ways that you might start to try to address those. All right, I'm actually going to pause this really quickly and stop sharing for a moment and just see if there is anybody that has any questions about that definition, or still doesn't know quite what we're talking about. Okay. So now that I'm back here, does anybody have any specific questions, or still aren't quite sure what I'm talking about? Okay. All right. It doesn't look like it, so I am just going to jump right back in the slideshow. This is a complicated topic, so I don't want to go too fast or miss anybody. Okay. So what do we remediate? Clearly, we remediate when we're remediating. When we are doing remediations, we are always remediating planetary energies, right? So we don't remediate signs, we don't remediate houses. We look at planets. They are primary. And what we want to remediate specifically are planets in detriment, right? So a planet that is in a difficult sign, right? So Mars in Taurus would be a big one that we'd want to remediate. Sun in Libra, Jupiter in Capricorn. I have that. Planets that are in signs that they don't have what they need, we want to use remediations to give them more of the tools that they need to act well. We also want to look at remediating planets in bad houses, especially if these planets are really important in your chart, or if they're just an important aspect of your life. You really, you're in a career that is particularly martial, but you have Mars in the 12th house, then you definitely want to look at remediating that. I have a pretty strong Mercury in Virgo in the 12th house. So it's something that I consistently have to think about remediating that I don't do quite enough. We haven't gone over aspects yet, but planets that are forming harsh aspects, especially to important points in your chart, you want to look at remediating to make nicer. Weak planets in general, especially planets that are weak, maybe, they're just not doing as well for, like, maybe they're not angular. Like let's say you have Mars ruling your ascendant. Let's say you're a Scorpio rising, but your Mars is in the 6th house, like a succeedant house. Then you might want to consider giving that planet like a little more oomph in order to empower your sense of self. And typically you always want to look at remediating your malefics, specifically your malefic out of sect. And if you remember sect, then if you're born during the daytime, then Mars is going to be your malefic out of sect. And there's a good chance you're going to want to look at remediating that. And if you're born at nighttime, then Saturn is your malefic out of sect. And there's a good chance you're going to want to look at remediating that. There's a number of reasons that you wouldn't jump to right to remediating that, but it's never a bad idea. Okay, so why are we remediating planetary energies? I put a lot of text on this screen because I want this to be something that you can go back to, because it is kind of a more, it's a more heady, more abstract idea that isn't super easy to get across. Okay, so why we remediate planetary energies is point one. We want to remember that our world, the world around us, is essentially shaped crystallization of light, right? We don't want to get into like the difference between time and space and light and matter exactly here, though that can be a fascinating conversation. Just want to remember everything around us is somehow an interesting shape of light, like light playing with itself in different ways, right? The ancient doctors, like Hippocrates, right, like Dioscorides, like the ancient Egyptians, like many shamans, recognize that their jobs as doctors, as healers, as manifestors is to engage with and actively shape this light, right? And so light on our planet and the way that we interact with it comes from these 7 wandering stars, right? Comes from, on some level, primarily, the sun reflected by the moon, who, is responsible for, what we think of as manifestation. And then basically like does a dance with these other stars, right? With the malefics, with the benefics, with Mercury, and then comes down here and becomes you, and becomes a tree, becomes a flower, becomes your house, right? So all of these 7 planets like have a really powerful say in the way that light looks. Remediation techniques basically come in and allow you to engage in that dance really actively, right? So all of these remediations you can think of as being a really proactive manifestation. I mean, this is what all magic is, but when you're working specifically with planetary remediations, you're really engaging with yourself on that level of light, and they're more powerful if you recognize that that's what's happening. Now, you can also think of this shape of light that you have. Hold on. Also think of this shape of light that you have like right now, like that this is like somehow you can think of it as your karma, right? Like as your fate, right? Is the way that all of the light was dancing in the stars at this moment when you manifested into this world, right? So a lot of these remediation techniques are helping the lights to kind of become more comfortable in your shape before they hit you and begin affecting your ability to act in the world. Right. And I hope that that makes sense. And the last note that I have here is that, your chart is a map of this, smaller egoic self's particular shape of light or karma. And my apologies if that comes off as a little confusing. I will definitely clarify that a bit more at the end. I'm hoping that we have some time for questions. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we remediate planetary energies? My favorite remediation is really working with the house that the planet whose energies that you want to remediate resides in, or stewards. Right. So remember, there's, a planet that's in the third house might be ruling the seventh. Right. So if you have like a Mars in the third and Scorpio is the seventh house, then Mars is affecting both the third house, Scorpio, and Aries. Right. So I don't want this to get too complicated, but just know that when you remediate a planet, those are the three places that there's typically three houses that you are affecting, right? And working actively with the topics of those houses is one way to remediate that energy. It's like, so that energy is there, where are you going to put it? Right. So an example would be, if the negative or the troublesome energy of a planet is happening in the 12th house, right? Like, what are some of the topics of the 12th house? The 12th house is, one of the really negative ones that you definitely want to avoid is self-undoing. But there are other topics of that house, right? Like hospitals, right? So I can engage that energy actively by putting my energy into a hospital, right? And then there's less energy to go to my self-undoing. Right? Does that make sense? Or, the sixth house is, illness and injury, but also hard work. Right? So sometimes I might want to be really if I'm really careful about where I'm putting a lot of hard work in, then I might be able to avoid illness or injury. Right? Or just take special care, like put extra energy into the attention that I'm giving to the topics of those houses. And then there's not as much, I can avoid the hardship that I know I want to avoid. Right. Okay. So that's one way. And that's something that, requires a little more awareness, a little more skill, but it is, I would say, in my opinion, the most active way of engaging. Okay, and then there's prayer, propitiation, meditation, right? Meditation always works 100% of the time for any planet. It's the one that you really don't need to think about. It's like you don't need to know anything. Sit and notice yourself. Sit in stillness and be at peace with who you are. Breathe, right? It will always 1000% of the time alleviate energies. If you want to make it more specific, dedicate that meditation to that particular planet. So you can do it at the altar of that planet, set up a Saturn altar, set up a Mars altar, and put in some prayer and propitiation, right? Make some offerings, chant the Orphic hymn, right? Make it a little more specific, make it a little more dedicated, and then sit and engage in your meditation. And that's Matthew's personal favorites. Mantra and sound and vibration. These are means and methods of working with remediation that I'm leaning more and more in the direction of myself. I have Saturn opposing my stellium in Leo right now, going through Aquarius. And in the Vedic tradition, the Hanuman Chalisa, or any kind of a mantra towards Hanuman will basically like weaken or diminish Saturn's energy. If I play the Hanuman Chalisa or any kind of mantra to Hanuman in the morning on a day, I absolutely 1000% notice that, kind of pressure that is holding back my forward momentum alleviate in a huge way. So that's something that I'm, a particular fan of right now. And really any kind of vibration that you're making that is, joyous or uplifting or cathartic is going to help move energies in a positive direction. And if you have a familiarity with any kind of, sound practice or music practice that particularly how to manipulate the elements with, of course that's going to make your work or make your sound healing more effective. Like if you know that, your fiery Mars is really burning you out and you want that energy to flow a little more particularly, you can work with, a more fiery vibration. Or if you want to work, we're going to get into this later, but if you want to work from the law of opposites, then a more watery vibration. Okay, and we're going to talk about particular stones and crystals, and of course, herbs and different ways of intentionally working energy through the body as we move later into the presentation. And, we can talk, there are, of course, other kinds of remediations, but these are the main ones we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so with remediation, there's two different ways that we can go that I just mentioned. There's the law of similars and the law of opposites. Some of you who engage in other kinds of healing works are maybe familiar with these from other areas of study. Here, when we talk about the law of similars, we're going to treat this as kind of like an ancient baseline that is always a really good idea, but that in our society, unfortunately, sadly, is not as available to us, because we do, unfortunately, live very much outside of the natural flow of energy, just the way that our society is constructed. So, when you read these bullet points here, you're going to be like, yeah, we should do this all the time. But unfortunately, you're going to notice that this is just not quite as available to us as it was to the ancients. So it's true. Utilizing remedies that carry the same energy as the imbalance is absolutely preferable in all cases of healing other than emergencies. That's absolutely true. It's the basis of homeopathy. Homeopathy is very, it can be very effective. The law of similars was definitely used most frequently and as a baseline for the ancients. And it is rooted in a trust that the body knows how to heal and that the universe is always moving towards balance, right? We don't live in a super balanced society. And many of us, unfortunately, are so used to pushing against the grain that we need to meet some resistance before we can fall into the flow. So I want us to, generally acknowledge that this is what we're moving towards. What we want is to be able to use the law of similars, right? And I'm going to give you an example. When you have a fever, when you go to, a regular doctor, they're going to try to diminish the fever, right? That takes a lot of energy out of the body. What we would do if we were using the law of similars is actually give you a heating herb. We would help that fever. We would push the energy in the direction of that fever so that the body doesn't have to exert as much energy to create the fever, to drive out whatever imbalance it has, right? So we'd, give you some cayenne, put you in a hot bath, right? Assist the energy in moving in that direction, right? Rather than cooling it, unless that fever was really dangerous, right? An emergency. And then we want to utilize a cooling herb. So we kind of want to think the same way sometimes in remediations. But only sometimes, and you'll know when that is the thing to do. Okay, so the law of opposites, it's always been there in healing. It's not like the law of opposites is like a new thing, right? And it's utilizing remedies that carry the opposing energy of the imbalance, right? So, taking this into, talking about planets and talking about our charts, this would be if you have a hyper strong Mars. Instead of going and working with Mars, we go to Venus and work with Venus, the opposing energy of Mars, right? And so this has always, been used mainly in emergency medicine, and it is the basis of allopathy or modern clinical medicine and the way that our, contemporary health establishments are set up. It was definitely generally looked down upon the ancients and even medieval and even early medieval doctors as basically a waste of vital life force, right? If you entrain your body or even your mind to constantly push through struggles or, basically like turn down the healing dial of your own body, then it's going to lead to waste. It's going to lead to stagnancy, and it's going to train your body not to react appropriately in situations. Unfortunately, most of us have been trained to react inappropriately or to react in opposition. So that's why a lot of the times we do need to use the law of opposites in our society, even if what we want to ultimately be doing is allowing the body or allowing the energy to naturally flow where it wants to go, because there's often dams set up, is the best way that I can explain it, that need to be broken through. And a really physical example of this is in autoimmune conditions, of course, where the body is attacking itself. And unfortunately, a lot of people, like in my own practice as an herbalist, as a healer, there's a lot of people have low-key autoimmune conditions, even if it's not something that shows up on a test, or extreme chronic conditions. And so when we're working with the law of opposites, we really want to think of it as something that we're using short term until we can get ourselves to a place where we can begin to employ the law of similars. All right, I rambled on about that a little bit longer than I would have liked to. Okay, so now we're going to get into, I'm going to give you some remediations that you will be using for each planet. And again, take notes. I want you to be, kind of like actively engaging, even though you can't talk back to me, so that you can have some, examples when we get to Q&A of how to use these to address conditions. Okay, so let's say you want to strengthen your Mars or make your Mars act nicer. And remember, those are two different things, right? Like a weak Mars is a Mars who can't get his energy across very clearly, right? Or, is really passive, is somehow diminished. So this would be, say, your Mars is in the second house, right? Like maybe just has a little bit of trouble, showing up in your life, or maybe has a lot of, pressure exerted from a negative aspect. What you want to do is strengthen. So a great way to strengthen would be using herbs, because remember, these herbs are crystallizations of light. So these herbs that I have listed here, cinnamon, cayenne, clove, and tobacco, these are really nice. They're gentle, but also potent, very forceful, very powerful, as opposed to some of the, honestly, some of the more poisonous herbs that could be associated with Mars. So regular doses of cinnamon, regular doses of cayenne, clove tea, working even just energetically with tobacco is going to give your body more light for Mars to work with, right? So this is like working with herbs internally is the ingestion of raw material that Mars likes, or any of our herbs. Right. And these can be worked with magically as well. Right. Of course, like if you're praying with these herbs, then it's going to be even more powerful. right? And of course, baths, washes. There are some really lovely like cinnamon floral waters that I've worked with before that are really potent, and that washes your skin with them. Any of these in a bath are really nice. Morris doesn't have as many that you can use in the bath. I have Damiana listed in this presentation under Venus, but Damiana is actually a really nice one for Mars as well. Now, working with stones, and remember in the beginning I said we want these touching the skin, these stones. That's more reshaping the light, right? Okay, so what happens, and this is how it works in Vedic, like the light of that planet hits the stone, takes a new shape before it hits your skin, right? So this is actually a mitigation of you can think of this very directly as a mitigation of karma. It's like that light is taking on the shape of this stone where that planet is happier and more effective, right? Before it touches your skin. So it's like that unhappy shape of light then doesn't have to affect your day-to-day life or how you move through the world, right? So it's like you're going to meet with less conflict, less resistance, right? Rather than actually having more of that light to play with in your body. Okay. And then just some general activities that one can do for Mars. Now, this is actually the, martial arts, cardio. This is actually working the energy out through the body. And really, any movement of energy out through your body is going to help anything. This is why like exercise, cardio, activity, just general movement in the world is really important to avoid stagnation. And, sweating things out, just keeping things moving, always a good idea for remediating any planet. But there are certain activities that are going to be more beneficial to the moving of that planet. And for Mars, of course, martial arts, fighting, wrestling, fencing, extreme cardio, like really pushing yourself. These kinds of things make Mars happy. These kinds of things give Mars more energy. And playful argumentation and debate. Like sometimes you just have to get the fight out, right? And sometimes you have to learn to perfect the fight, right? Learning how to fight better. Like these kinds of things make Mars happy. And this kind of something like a Mars in Taurus would be very helpful for, or even a Mars that is too strong, right? Like, let's say if somebody who has like a really dignified Mars in the 10th house Kazemi, it's like, that's going to be a little much. Like you're going to need to direct that energy somewhere. Like you absolutely need to, or that's going to affect other relationships. So that's where like having a place where you can just fight any of these, like that's going to be good for you too. So that's going to be good for, both ends of the spectrum where Mars is like too prominent, too strong, overbearing, or really needs to learn how to level up, really needs to learn how to step up. And I'm starting with the malefics because they're who we need to work with most often. Okay. And so remedies for Saturn. And of course, there are many remedies for all of these planets. They all do something a little bit different. I'm just giving you some of the basics and my favorites. So Solomon, Seal, Comfrey, and Borage. These are all for people with, they're great for forming a relationship with Saturn in general, for working with Saturn in general. But these are especially for people that Saturn's really kind of like putting you through the ringer. Like Saturn's forming a harsh aspect to an important planet, or Saturn's your malefic out of sect and is, like on your ascendant or something. It's like this, a mean Saturn like that affects you on the level of the bones, right? It goes deep. And these are bone remedies, joint remedies, people that, are like getting worn down by Saturn. Saturn's very good at wearing down. Solomon, Seal, Comfrey, and Borage, excellent for those kinds of afflictions. Storax and Vetiver, these are more like fumigation herbs. And so these are for people who maybe like have a more like mental fog or feel more like an energetic cursing or pressure or like pestilence around them. So burning storax or vetiver in an essential oil diffuser are great for that. I mean, you can also get like the roots of vetiver and burn those as well. Storax, personally, I think smells awful, but great for purging demons, great for purging pestilence. You can't sleep at night because there's some energies coming at you. Storax, fantastic, does not smell very good. Vetiver smells lovely, very opening for the heart, very uplifting, more like for getting out of a depressive fog. Stones for Saturn, in the Vedic traditions, they go sapphire and then amethyst. So sapphire first, blue sapphire. I really like those. And those are definitely, helping you to work with the most positive aspects of Saturn. If you have an affliction, onyx and obsidian, I like better, like for the actual, just like absorbing those negative energies that might be attracted to you. Lapis lazuli is a co-ruled by Jupiter. So if you're really looking, especially if you're very dedicated to a spiritual practice, and spiritual power is something that is really, you're very going for that, lapis is a really, really nice one for getting the more dignified aspects of Saturn as kind of like that gatekeeper to the spiritual world. All right, and ways to kind of work it out through the body. Proactive endings. Cut things off, get rid of things when they're not serving you. Just constantly be on the lookout for it. If anybody else is going through a rough Saturn transit right now, I can't speak more highly of the practice of cleaning out your closet. Just throwing things away. Really doing the hard work of analyzing how relationships are serving you. Just purge. That is definitely where I'm at right now. Shadow work. You're all in wealth. You're on this. I trust you. I don't think I need to say much about that. And another really beautiful one is embracing and nurturing the least of us, like taking care of homeless people, helping outcasts to find a place, helping, those who have been rejected. Like Saturn rules the outcasts of society. Good way to make good with him is to, take care of his people. And if you are his people, take care of yourself. Like really honor and uplift and, feel that kind of that beauty and power that comes with being one of those outsiders, being one of those outcasts, and, having that, really up close and personal taste of the liminal, of what it is to ride the margins. Because that's where real manifest spiritual power comes from. And that's a great gift that Saturn gives us. Okay. Remedies for Mercury. And again, of course, some of these herbs you're going to be familiar with from, when we talked about herbs of the different planets. I tried to throw in some new ones, though I will say, like I already did peppermint. Peppermint is my favorite Mercury herb because it's the one that is most upfront mercurial. It has two different actions. It's both heating and cooling, one way going in, a different way going down. Okay. And then also lavender, one of our best calmers for the nervous system. I had a really hard time making this slideshow. I'm really sorry, Mercury, that your head got cut off. But he's still got his, his regalia that makes him pretty noticeable. Lavender, marjoram, thyme, anise. We talked about mandrake last time, which is, a super powerful Mercury herb. But a lot of herbs that have effects on the nervous system have mercurial properties because Mercury rules the nervous system as well as the airways in our body, right? Like taking nice deep breaths, nice deep cleansing breaths. That is an amazing Mercury remedy. I can't say enough for it. And any herb that helps you take nice deep breaths, you'll notice a lot of these, a lot of Mercury herbs have a lot of volatile oils. That's because they all You can breathe them in. They're going to do cleansing work. They're going to do stimulating work on your body. One herb that is co-ruled Mercury and Jupiter that is very very needed right now by many, and that is a specific for COVID, white pine. It does a beautiful job on the lungs and really helps bring a lot of energy into the head and fights COVID. So I highly recommend you get your hands on some white pine tincture if that is a concern for you at all. So in the Vedic tradition, the primary stone of Mercury, this won't be a surprise to any of you who have heard of the emerald tablets. I'm sure you all have. You are in a Hermetic course after all. Mercury, Hermes, emeralds. Emeralds are also expensive. So fortunately, there are other herbs, there are other stones that we can work with too. I think the second down the chain in the Vedic tradition is peridot, and then green jade. Jade is a beautiful, 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 beautiful stone. If you're a lady, I highly recommend you get a green jade yoni egg. Does fabulous things in terms of remediation on a number of levels. And two other stones. Actually, I'm going to give another one here. Malachite, labradorite, and moldavite. Any of you who are crystal hounds or stone hounds, or just really love crystals, you probably know of the infamous moldavite, which is probably actually what the Holy Grail. They think a lot of the moldavite and emerald were actually categorized the same back in the ancient world. You probably know moldavite is actually from like an ancient asteroid, right? So it's actually a piece of, this awesome rock that fell from the stars. And it has very immense powers of manifestation and should be treated with some caution. And that's always like, ooh, anything that they say, be careful. It's like, I want to get my hands on it, right? I work with moldavite quite a bit. So yes, moldavite. I wish I would have put that on there. Is another excellent Mercury remediation stone. Okay. Again, really with Mercury, breath work and meditation are like, it's hard to beat those two. That's really where you should go first. If you're having Mercury problems, please sit down and pay attention to your breath. Everything else will make sense after that. Another good one, if you're in a good place and you just want to strengthen your Mercury, or you're doing some, manifestation work. And again, you're in wealth. This is something you're very familiar with, engaging the mind in paradox. Read some surrealist poetry. Read some Rumi. There have been studies done. It absolutely strengthens the mind. It absolutely makes you more clever, right? Clean and clear communication, especially in important relationships, always important. Clear and clean communication is extraordinarily hard work and takes a lot of bravery, but the more you do it, the more addicting it becomes. And highly, highly recommend, as often as you can, saying exactly what you mean and exactly what you feel. And then also give your space to do the exact opposite, right? Create containers for playful deception and trickery. If you've read the Orphic hymn to Mercury, that's his jam. Tricking, deceiving. Allow yourself to embody that occasionally, consciously, right? And then it'll bite you in the ass a lot less often. And Mercury gets to do what he loves best, which is playing tricks, playing games. So give yourself room to own that. Okay. Now, remedies of the sun. Especially right now, the sun is in fall. The sun is in Libra. Many of us need some sun remedies right now. And I have, some of the heavy hitters up top here. Calendula. For those of you who suffer from seasonal affective disorder, there is nothing better in all of the universes than calendula. Make yourself a nice, warm calendula infusion, not hot. It has some mucilage, so we won't get into that. Saffron, chamomile, Dandelion, it's going to be time to harvest roots soon. So dandelion root is a great one. And for fumigation purposes, you really can't beat frankincense, though there are many lovely solar herbs or solar scents that you can burn. Chamomile is also a really, really, really amazingly beautiful incense, and highly, highly recommend those of you who make incense work with chamomile. In terms of the stones, gold clearly is very solar. In the Vedic tradition, the chain of command was ruby, garnet. Oh man, there's this one weird red stone. But if you can get a ruby, do the ruby. If not, do the garnet. And citrine is also, a fabulous, super nice solar plexus empowering stone. For working it through the body, hey, if the sun's out, work with the sun, right? Get it directly, sunbathe. Your body does hold on to that light and needs that light. And again, in times of COVID, and as we go into times when those of us who have to experience winter, those of you who don't, good job making excellent life decisions. I'm not one of those people. Get that energy in your body, hold it in there. It works. If you can get out and get sun, get out and get sun. I'm even on the point of I used to, not be super into the idea of tanning beds. And now I'm like, if you need it and it kind of works, do it. Sun gazing also, sun gazing intelligently, making sure you're not hurting your eyes, waiting until the sun is obscured enough that you can look at the sun without any kind of lingering imprints in your eyes, not creating floaters. Earthing, walking barefoot on the ground, is another way that our body learns how to hold on to solar energy more cleanly, right? Becoming a better channel for the energy of the sun to reach into the ground. So just flesh on earth. That's all it means. Fasting. I know that might seem like a weird one. But when we fast, when we become empty like that, it's easier for us to hold on to light. We have more space for light in our body, so we have more vital life force. So I really recommend that if you haven't tried a fasting practice and you have depression or low energy, please do. Just go 24 hours, just 24 hours without eating. You can do it. You absolutely can do it. Try just drinking water. If just drinking water doesn't work, allow yourself to drink some tea. If just drinking tea doesn't work, allow yourself to have a banana in the morning. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but give yourself a chance. Try it. Really, there's no better way to improve your health. Along the lines of fasting, and removing some distractions so that you can really get to know yourself and have space for, your vital life force to become known to your conscious mind. Sit alone in silence. Just sit and be with yourself. Not meditating, just observing, right? Being aware. How do I feel? You can go and do things, but just be alone and try not to have any other distractions, taking in as little sensory information as you can, just being and doing slowly, right? With just the thing you're doing without distractions. A lot of people in contemporary society don't get that a lot. Dancing. Dancing is a beautiful way to get to know your own life force, especially freeform dance. It doesn't have to be ecstatic dance, but just, turning on a song and figuring out how you want to move. What feels good, what feels joyful, what feels cathartic. Get to know yourself in rhythm. It's a really very beautiful solar remedy. And then for those of you, really trying to, be the sun in your community, or learning how to, exemplify that role of the sun, leading or initiating creation and development of a passion project, right? Find something that really inspires you and then just go out and do it. like start taking steps, start fantasizing, start imagining, like create a space for you to build that thing that really drives you. That might sound obvious, but sometimes we don't think of that. Okay, remedies for the moon. In terms of herbs, again, my favorites: marshmallow, mugwort, poppy, and creamy treats. Those anything that like really mimics mother's milk. Like the thing is, for those of you who are vegan, avocado in the vegetable world is the closest thing to mother's milk, and it is like creamy like that, or coconut cream. These are things that like are fatty, that just really deeply nourish us and moisten us and give us that like necessary lubrication to feel like we have more space in the world. These things help us make us feel like we can take up much more space. And the mucilage and marshmallow is another one of those that really fuels the intra and extracellular matrix. And then things like mugwort and poppy just help us to, calm, rest, relax, and feel nourished in our being in the world. In terms of stone, pearl is the primary in Vedic. Moonstone is the secondary in Vedic. But some other beautiful ones, of course, are opal, selenite, and silver. The silvery moon is ruled by the moon. Then in terms of embodiment, moon bathing. If you haven't tried moon bathing, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Or moon gazing. Tidying and beautifying all the things that are represented by the moon in your life. So your home, your car, your body, even your community, and nourishing yourself, connecting with your food, connecting with those substances that literally become your body. So, at least in my part of the world, we've been having some bomb mushroom explosions with all of the rains. If you're a mushroom forager, it's a great moon remedy, or any kind of foraging. Also, fall in places and where, you have fall. This is the time for harvesting roots. Get out, connect with the land, connect with your food, or if you have a garden, connect more with your garden. Cook for yourself, cook for your loved ones, and connect with water. So like hot baths, cold showers, go swimming, and of course, meditate. I'm going to do a time check here soon. Remedies for Venus are lesser benefic, or are more material world rolling benefic. Rose. You really can't beat rose. Peony is another big one in terms of like fertility. So if you're a woman and you're looking to really nourish your reproductive system, peony and red clover and lady's mantle are amazing. If you're anybody with a human body and you're, just trying to get more sexy creative energies flowing, Damiana, Ylang Ylang, and Rose are your go-tos. And of course, that sexual energy is also your creative energy, is also your spiritual energy. If you're just trying to get up more of that ability to connect with that raw, vital life force that leads to manifestation in this world, these are some really beautiful herbs to work with. Ylang Ylang, of course, is we more work with as an essential oil. So that's more for fumigation, for breathing in. And it is a very, very, very lovely, essential, sexy one. Highly recommend. First class Venus remediation, diamond. In the Vedic tradition, the tear down is white sapphire. I also find that pearl absolutely carries Venusian qualities, and this isn't in any of the ancient texts, but rose quartz, clearly a very lovely heart stone. Rhodonite, and I don't have it on here, but also rhodochrosite. These are really amazing stones. For rhodonite is more particularly for helping you to feel the gifts that you have to share with the world, and rhodochrosite is for helping you to like get them out there and kind of project them outward. So those are some of my favorite Venus herbs. In terms of embodiment, flirtation, sensual dance, solo or partnered. Belly dancing alone is amazing because you get to like really like actually connect with and learn to work those, reproductive organs. Using a yoni egg, clearly another way to do that. Mirror gazing or eye gazing. So either, looking at your own left eye in the mirror or doing it as a partner practice, looking at somebody else's left eye and really opening yourself up for that, reflective vision, like seeing your beauty either, in your reflection or in your reflection through another person. Is a really beautiful Venus remedy, especially if you're struggling with showing up in relationships or having other people show up in relationships. Singing, creating music, painting, any kind of, creative activity, even if you don't want to do it. Like it's a remediation, right? You wouldn't need a remediation if you wanted to do it. You make yourself do it. Like that's part of that, like enacting the will. It's like we don't always want to do that, but we do want to, especially if we know that something's stuck. If you have a piano, you haven't played the piano in a long time, or you've always wanted to play the piano. It's really intimidating. It's like the last thing you want to do, but you sit down and you pound something out. You press a key. You see how it feels. You press another key. You see how it feels. You give yourself a container. You're going to sit in this agony for 5 minutes and eventually you're going to like it, right? And that's breaking down, again, doing the job of breaking down the dams, right? So that is a law of opposites thing. Okay, so remedies of Jupiter. Basils, all of the basil, culinary basil, Thai basil, holy basil, all of the basils. They're very, very beautiful, powerful, uplifting, joyous energies that Jupiter brings us that helps us to enjoy the world. They're very much associated with abundance. Sage, of course, associated with wisdom. Like they help us to age well. Culinary sage really actually does affect how we age on a cellular level, and really helps retain youth. In some ways, it could be probably seen as Venusian in that way as well. But it helps you to hold on to the wisdom of age. I'll put it like that. It helps you become a sage. The agrimony is another beautiful one. I put a lot more herbs here than other planets because a lot of us are interested in working with Jupiter because we want abundance, and why not? Lemon balm, another excellent one for abundance. Wood betony for health all around. Linden, excellent heart herb, also moistening, helps with the aging process. And then in terms of strength, oak, again, pine. Cedar for clearing, cedar for just bringing in helpful energies, like energies that just assist you with going in the direction that you're already pointed, right? The prime stone in the Vedic tradition is yellow sapphire. And again, of course, that really, powerful one that was lauded by the Egyptians and by the Romans, lapis lazuli. For the Romans, lapis lazuli particularly was Jupiter stone. Quartz, just for that amplification property. And then in terms of, just embodying and living Jupiter in your life, engaging in your spiritual study and practice, really putting concerted effort in is going to call Jupiter into your life. Meditation, not to sound like a broken record, hanging out in a thunderstorm, because why not? Because lightning is a real thing, because thunder is a real thing, and feeling that energy, like allowing yourself to really like take it in and move with it and receive it is extraordinarily empowering. Actively working on yourself, self-improvement, owning your inner authority, and then putting yourself in a space regularly where you are teaching and guiding others is literally being Jupiter, and you are going to make good friends with him in that way. In this next slide, I just have a reminder for you of what each of the houses represents. And of course, we can put other things. There's, some other things in these houses too that's not on this slide, but, go back to your notes. I recommend after this class or, later in this week or, throughout the month that you look at the house placements of all of your planets. Next time we meet, we are going to start going over aspects. So this is going to become a little more clear. But think about ways that you can utilize themes of the houses to work with those planets and those planetary energies, and how you want to use some of the remediations that we just talked about. So for a while, Merlin and I were not, neither of us right now at the moment are taking on new clients, but we are both going to be opening up for new clients soon. I'm going to be turning on the option to purchase consultations with me again on October 15th. So if that's something that you've been interested in, just know that you'll be able to go to crystalwoodling.com and sign up for a session with me then. I'm also going to be launching some more courses here in the near future, probably around November. And Matthew will be taking clients again starting November 1st. He has taken on a couple here or there during Gnosis, but that's been really rare. But you'll be able to purchase just like a consultation with him starting on November 1st. And you can do that at ancientastrology.org. Okay, I'm going to stop share and cross my fingers that I have not gone too far over. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go right to our questions. And again, if you've put anything in the chat box, please just move that over to the ask a question box. All right, so Elle asked, if your relationship with a planet feels weak, disconnected, or estranged, would you recommend other strategies outside of remediation for building a strong, positive, ongoing relationship with that planet, or would remedial practices alone be appropriate? Well, I would say anything that you're doing to build a strong relationship with that planet is a remediation. I would put that in the category of remediation. There's just some classical remediations and then, other things that you might do more intuitively. The first thing that I would do, I'm just that kind of person. I have Cancer on my 10th house cusp. Build an altar to that planet, wear the colors of that planet. It doesn't hurt to get a stone for that planet, to drink teas that, particularly are known for being able to absorb and hold the light of that planet. So that is absolutely what I would do. And then try to be that planet, like use some of the embodiment techniques that I mentioned in the slides. Okay. Another question from Mel. Is it possible that people are naturally drawn to remedies when planetary remediation is beneficial? Example, somebody with Mars in detriment. Absolutely, if you're lucky. But unfortunately, the opposite can also be true. And that just depends on the kind of person you are. So the answer is yes. And I think when we are balanced, like if you're meditating regularly and just like living in a way that really feels in alignment, then you absolutely are naturally going to be drawn to what's beneficial. Another from Elle. Love you, Elle. On the other hand, would somebody with a planet in fall or detriment naturally be averse to remedies associated with that planet? Again, either can be true. But honestly, actually, like this example that you're giving, somebody with Mars in detriment being strongly averse to argumentation, fighting, or competition, that kind of has more to do with house placement. All of these things are very complicated. I wish that I could give you a simple answer to these, but unfortunately, astrology is not simple. Humans, not simple. It really depends on a lot of things. Can remediation be beneficial even if the planet isn't in detriment in fall or in a weak house in your natal chart? Absolutely. And we didn't talk about that as much, but you definitely can grasp on to one really strong planet in your chart and just work with that planet. And there are people who do that. Like say you already have just like a really fucking rocking Jupiter, but you're just like, I am just going to grab onto Jupiter. Everybody else be damned. It's me and Jupiter in this game. And we're just going to do this thing. You can go that route too. And it works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. Again, life's complicated. You always got decisions to make. That's why get a good astrologer. Do you have resources you recommend for learning more about the Vedic chain of command you've mentioned a few times? I can try to put that in an email. It's not really like a chain of command. I was using that kind of loosely. It's just kind of like, if you can afford a diamond or get a diamond, get a diamond. If not, get a white sapphire. It's not like it's just, what they think works better. And that's not necessarily always true. Okay, well, if nobody else has any questions, I might. Oh, thank you for the. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the White Tree of Gondor. I don't know if you're here at the beginning, but I tried to put a call out for other nerds. I think can somebody tell me, does Matthew send out the slides to you all, or do the slides get sent out to you? I actually don't handle the logistics ends of that, but I think we normally send them to, and if we haven't, we totally can send them to somebody who's like in the wealth crew. I think it's I forget who I sent them to, but I'll make sure they get to you. I will absolutely do that. All right. Well, I think that's all, everybody. Oh, Michael, you don't think they've ever gotten sent out? I think we have always intended to send them out, and we can totally do that. So I am going to. Oh, you get the replay. Okay. Well, you know what? We have all the slides, so you'd want to send them. Thank you so much, Michael. So I am definitely going to send these, and if you like, we can also send the other slides to you from the past, because they're definitely very useful. So I will make that my personal mission. Okay, all right. Well, it was fabulous to see you all again, and we will be back next month and talking about I Wilson, and I hope that that's how you say your name. I will we'll do that, and I'll see you next month, and we'll be talking about aspects, and then a lot of things are going to make so much more sense after we go into aspects. That's kind of covering the last really big mechanical piece of Hellenistic astrology. Okay. All right. Mwah. Love you all. And we will see you next month. And I'm going to get that sent to you.